Hey, I'm Jordan Gray, and this is the Intentional Life video series. From sex, relationships, communication, and character development to health, creativity, and self-love, the Intentional Life is your go-to source for powerful, actionable advice from amazing, world-changing people. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Intentional Life video series. I'm your host, Jordan Gray, and today I am super stoked to have Elizabeth Dialto on the show. Elizabeth, good to have you.
Hi.
So Elizabeth, in my opinion, mainly focuses around helping people deeply connect to their bodies through movement, self-acceptance, self-love, the whole shebang. She's also the author of Untame Yourself, Reconnect to the Lost Art, Power, and Freedom of Being a Woman, which is a sweet book. I've read it at least 3 or 4 times. And I'm not sure if I get the order right, but it focuses primarily on connection, listening, receiving, and trust. Trust and
Close. Yeah. Connection, listening, trust, receiving. You were so close.
CLTR.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. So one of my favorite things of Elizabeth's history that I feel like is a really underground way that we completely overlap, which I didn't realize until I was on her podcast video a few months back, that used to be a personal trainer, and then now you work primarily in the self-acceptance, self-love arena. And in my personal trajectory, I kind of also went from that outside and then inside way of like, I used to help people get into relationships and be something close to like an overlapping social skills instructor / pickup guy, and help people get relationships, but it was very behavioral and surface. And I was like, wait, how about authenticity? How about inside out?
Yeah.
And so I see that in your trajectory over the last decade or so as well. Would that
Totally.
be accurate?
Yeah. I like to use the term. I went from teaching people how to work out to teaching people how to work in.
Beautiful. Yeah. Whereas, I'd probably say that I went from like how to appear as like impressive or lovable to like just letting go of any armor or shell and being like, when was I not lovable? Like, how is that even a thing that I was questioning?
That's right.
So yeah, I've probably been on like somewhere between 60 to 100 podcasts in the last 3 years. And I can say with a pretty high degree of confidence that my favorite interview that I've ever done was being on Elizabeth's show. So I'm stoked to have you as a guest.
Thank you. Can I ask, I know this is your interview, but why?
Why you?
Yeah.
Because I sent out a survey about 6 months ago asking my email list, my followers, what they most, who they were, what they were most looking for. And drastically the biggest surprise in the like 8 to 10 options of things that I gave them that I was like, what would you like me to be speaking about, writing about more often? First of all, video was like, in terms of format, do like more videos. I was like, okay, so here we are. But in terms of topics, the one that surprised me the most was self-love was the number 2, and then body acceptance and like body image, which tied into sexuality, was also not as highly ranked, but they were pretty close to each other. A lot of people that voted for one also voted for that. And I was like, oh, self-love, I've written about that like maybe 3% of my 300 articles. And it's, such, in that inside out revolution kind of way, it's such an important message that I was like, this clearly has to get talked about a lot more.
Cool.
So I'm curious, what are the kind of like primary subsets of people that come to you? I know that my perception is that you more work with women than men in terms of percentage of your time, but what are the most common pain points? What do people come to you knowing that they want to change? What's front of mind for them?
Yeah. So probably number 1 over the last year is women who are in this transitional place of some kind of success, whether they're a successful mom, like they have a beautiful, amazing family, or they have some kind of successful career where, they're making good money, they're paying the bills, but something in their soul is going, I cannot continue to show up to this job. Like, I am meant for something more. Something in me really wants to be expressed. So like in that transitional phase of like, how do I figure out what I really want to do with my life? And also, how do I get out of how do I get out of this well-paying job that I have that supports me or my family or whatever? So a lot of people in that transition and in that inquiry around there has to be something more meaningful for me to do on this planet than show up at this job.
Mm.
And I've gotten also a lot of women who are in relationships and are ambivalent for whatever reason. Should I stay or should I go?
Hmm.
I get that a lot. And then just all the general, everything that you were saying related to body. Women, like something I say all the time is get out of your head and into your body. People who are like, I don't even know what that means. What do you mean be in my body? And so I get a lot of women who have lived their whole life as if their mind and their body are separate.
Hmm.
And so it's all about inhabiting a female body, which is like it's like the original most amazing work of art in the history of all art on the planet, and just like engaging with that feminine side of things, right? Because our culture super trains us. We are well trained in the masculine arts
Hmm.
because that's how everything works.
Yeah.
School is competitive. We have to rank. We have to get the right answers. We have to stand in line. We have to follow the rules. So linear and masculine. So women also who were kind of like, I just, there has to be more. I can't. I cannot suppress this like feminine wild nature inside of me anymore. Someone help me. And that's me.
Hmm. It's interesting. I always hear that common thread of, it's like the golden handcuffs in career or in your love relationship. You don't want to let go of, but I'm already making, 6 or 7 figures here, or, they do love me and I'm still getting like cuddles and sex and affection, and like there's still those benefits that people are almost reluctant to let go of, which I totally get from personal experience. And I feel like in so many ways you're a female me, which is probably why our last interview was so fun. But I get so many of those exact male clients, the guys that come to me that are like, that are so analytical, overly in their heads, and I help them kind of, build a bridge from their mind to their heart. So I
Yeah.
totally get that. Um, Interesting. So, and then also the building the bridge of helping people go from their masculine to feminine, or just in their head to also in their body. And it sounds
Yeah.
like, by the way you describe it, it's not how do I polarize them just as hard in the opposite direction, but how do I integrate both?
It's the integrate. The word I've been really enjoying using lately is harmonizing, right? How can I live in this like incredible harmony where I know how to dance in and out of my energies as needed, right?
Hmm. I love that. I play music. I have a guitar like 2 feet away from me, and that makes me think of how, when you play two strings that are supposed to be in tune but aren't, and they sound really ugly together, you just stop playing the second string because that sounds really off. I can imagine that when their masculine and feminine feels out of alignment, out of integrity, and it sounds really dissonant, they just stop playing the feminine note because like, well, that doesn't sound like it works, so I'll just stay in the very societally reinforced masculine way of being.
Totally. And not to mention how much shame is tied into feminine expression for, I mean, any laundry list of reasons.
Right, for men and women.
Totally.
Oh, there's some societal shift that needs to happen.
Yeah.
In accordance with that, I know that in my line of work, especially around the sex stuff, there's so much just batshit crazy advice. I'm like, how are people even saying this? I imagine that there would be that to the same degree, if not more, when it comes to, especially the bodily love, self-acceptance kind of stuff. What, if anything, do you feel like is the common advice that you're kind of battling against? Like, what's the paradigm that you're trying to kill off that maybe magazines are still pushing?
This is really interesting. I'm really not into all the things that are just band-aids or bombs. Like the metaphor I use all the time or analogy. I always mix up analogy, metaphor. Metaphor is an
Same thing.
analogy. I don't know. But it's like if you were mowing down the weeds with the lawn, the weeds, you just mowed it down. It's going to grow back.
Mm.
And so things like put on red lipstick to feel sexy. Like, you know what? That actually does work sometimes. I do feel pretty hot when I put on red lipstick, but it's not solving the root reason of why I don't feel sexy on a regular basis or why I don't love myself. So that's what I mean by like slapping on, oh, wear some sexy lingerie under your clothes to work. Feel more feminine. It's like, yes, but like what's at the roots of things? So anything that is just like a temporary indulgence or like a soothe and distract solution versus like how about we get up in there and figure out like at your core let's clean out the things that all the voices in your head that are telling you why you're not enough, you're not beautiful, you're not sexy, like you don't deserve, you're not worthy, all these things. Like, let's get to the roots of that stuff, clean it out, and then upload some new programming that's like honest and true. And the thing is, actually, it's not new programming. The root of everything I teach is that everything you've ever needed has always been inside of you. And I specifically say it that way. I don't say everything you need is inside of you because I want to emphasize it's always been there. There has never been a moment of your life when you weren't fully equipped with exactly what you needed. The issue is access. Why aren't you able to access those things? Why do we forget how magnificent we are and how beautiful, like, all the things inside of us really are? And so that's the stuff, just like the Band-Aid bomb kind of stuff that just has people trying things out. And then when it doesn't work, people don't go, "Oh, that wasn't for me." Then it's just another thing to add on the list of what's wrong with me. Why didn't that work for me? Right?
You then failed at trying to be self-loving. It's like, oh, well, there's another thing for me to shame myself around
That's right.
24/7.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not into that.
So it sounds like there's, a big element of kind of unlearning the stories or questioning the shame that's been piled on top of us. Like, how do do you have question prompts? How do you lead people to even realizing that they have those stories, they have those issues? Because if they're very used to living only in their heads, maybe they don't feel the emotional pain in their bodies that's saying, this thing that happened in sixth grade really hurt me. Like, how do you have people access those things?
Yeah. This is a great question and it's tough to answer. So I'll try to
Totally.
articulate it. This is my straight up superpower. Last year, I've been doing things online for about 5 years, and I was like dying behind my computer because I need to be in front of humans. I'm an enormous empath, and whereas sometimes it could be a curse, right? If I'm taking on other people's stuff and I'm not being like consistent with my energetic hygiene to like cut my cords and like not be holding everyone's stuff in my own body. But it's also beautiful when I can actually feel what's going on with someone and I'm so tapped into my intuition. And my art is asking the question that other people need the answer to. So I'm just really good at getting that hunch and asking the question to pull the thread. And like 98% of the time, if I start a sentence with, "I have a hunch, tell me if I'm wrong," or like, "Answer this for me," people are like, "Oh my God," that was the thing,
Right.
right? And I started running these small intensive weekends, and women would come, and it's always hilarious to me. People always show up like, "I know what I need to work on, I know what's going on," and I'm like, "What about that thing that's hiding over there that doesn't feel like a big deal?" And they're like, "Oh my God." It's like, I used to say the same thing when I was a personal trainer, when I was like having people do these tough workouts. It's like, hate me now, love me later. And the other thing really about it is another one of my superpowers is creating that container and that safe space in which people can feel, unfold, unravel, and actually feel safe to even go there because they are being held in a way that is very honoring and not, in some cases, re traumatizing, right? I've heard of this. There's a lot of this. And again, it goes back to the same thing, like the surface level stuff, like put on red lipstick. There's a lot of amazing, well intending people out there that are running workshops, leading women's and men's groups and circles who just really don't understand the nuances of vulnerability and how it needs to be earned and how safety for men and for women is like the number one most important element for true vulnerability, not like this forced vulnerability where it's like stand across from someone you've never met in your life, stare deeply into their eyes. Okay, now let's share your deepest, darkest truth. Like,
Yeah.
that is not like,
You can't
no.
hotwire a connection like that and be like, be best friends right now. It's like, ugh.
Yeah. And like, those people haven't earned that, right? They haven't earned your deepest, darkest thing. And then you just feel raw and naked. And if it's not handled or addressed or tied up or put back together once you've unpacked it, God, there's a lot of people. This happens in yoga classes. This is rampant.
Yeah, it's amazing you brought that up. I've never thought about it in a like front of mind way, but it's totally a thing. Like almost every weekend seminar or like not seminar, but more things that are like a mix between a mastermind or like a men's group or be here in this cabin for a weekend with a bunch of strangers, there's always some like supposedly lighthearted icebreakers that are exactly that in nature. Like, oh, let's do like a share circle where we like share our like deepest shame wounds with 30 people. And
That are
that's
not healed, that might still be unprocessed.
totally, yeah, it's unhealthy and potentially, easily potentially damaging for everyone in that moment. And
Yeah.
it's actually one thing that, go for it.
I was going to say, well, and that's the thing, unless the person holding the space is like amazing at holding that and handling it.
Yeah.
And this is like a big energetic piece, which some people, I'm not super familiar with your audience. So some people might be like, what is she talking about all this energy stuff? But like energetically, especially for people who are super sensitive, some people can really hold that. Like if someone's in my group, my coach Siobhan says, when you're under my wings, I love that image. If someone's under my wings, there's nothing I can't handle. There's nothing they can bring into the circle that isn't going to be okay. And also, I'm not leaving until it is okay. I'm not going to be like, well, 6 o'clock, time's up. See you
Yeah.
guys later. Sorry, you're still in the middle of that thing that we opened up irresponsibly.
Sorry
You
about
know?
that shame spiral, but it's lunchtime, so peace.
Uh,
It's actually one of my favorite things that Brene Brown has ever written about, the
yes,
shame and
yes.
vulnerability researcher, that I feel like doesn't get enough attention or credit in the totality of all the amazing books that she's written, is that she talks quite extensively, and again, this piece gets like the least press or coverage, about
Yeah,
how
that's
not
right.
everyone deserves your
That's right.
shame story. That
That's
there
right.
might be, 2, 3, 5 people that you can really always feel safe and open up to. Because for that exact reason, if you, whether you're on stage or on a podcast interview or in a physical, in-person circle of 30 people on a weekend retreat, there is that absolute, potentially damaging danger that if you share, well, here's really my deepest, darkest, scary thing that I haven't done enough work on yet to be able to share that. Because if you say, this is my thing, and 3 of the 30 people on that weekend retreat go like, oh yeah, you fucked up. That's pretty bad. Then that person can just like retreat and be like, oh, well, then I really need to hide that. Like certain things, they really are only deserved by a small handful of really deeply trusted people that have earned the right to hear that shame story or that emotional wound.
And also, I think a huge important component of that is people who are holding you in like the highest vision of who you can be, not who you were, right? So something that makes me cringe as well, and again, it's so well intending, is when someone does share something and someone's like, "Oh my God, can I hug you?" Again, they mean it with love, but it's basically like, "Oh my God, can I continue to treat you like a victim of whatever the thing is that you just shared?"
Yeah.
And I think most people don't have like the confidence in their voice to go, hey, I'm actually not comfortable with this. I'm not going to participate in this. I've done that and stuff. Even this past weekend, one of the prompts was like, if I wasn't again, standing across from a stranger, making eye contact, one of the prompts was, if I wasn't trying to be so cool right now, I would dot, dot, dot. And there was like not a fiber in my being that was trying to be cool. And I'm like, I looked at my person and I was like, yeah, this doesn't resonate for me, so I'm not going to answer this one. So you can go if you want to. I was like, I'm not trying to be cool. I just don't give a shit, actually.
That's exactly what came up for me when you like had that, that sentence completion thing come up. I was like, my answer would probably be, I would dot 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 opt out of this exercise right now.
Like, I'm not doing this. Yeah, and I've been at workshops where people are, sometimes you have healed something and you dealt with it, and then people are trying to get you to dig in, go find a memory, and I'm like, I'm good. I actually
It's
don't
clean.
need to, it's clean. I don't need to rehash it, dig it up, again, just to get connected or feel connected or participate. But there's that like weird pressure in those types of situations, you know?
Yeah, it's almost this kind of, not necessarily, I don't think it's like a cultural wide thing yet, but I think especially in the, coaches, therapists,
Yeah.
personal brand people space, that there's this kind of like, that our wounds are held in such a high regard that they're almost pedestalized as like, these are your stories, these are things you have to like cherish and rehash, and you can go into those, miser technique exercise kind of moments, and people will, because they haven't necessarily done work around their things and they're projecting, there's that kind of like, okay, but I know you say it's clean, but like you have to be mad at your parents, you have to be mad at
Right.
your rapist, you have to be mad at the person who bullied you. It's like, things can be healed. And I'm not saying this to a perfectionist that like, yes, 100% there should be like no emotional response to that thing ever. That's not what clean means to me. It's, the analogy I often use is you've gone up into the attic and you've swept out enough dust that when you go in there and you shine the flashlight around, you don't really see any visible dust. Is it spotless and like, 100% sterile? No, but nothing is. But it
Yeah.
is that thing that you can poke the wound and you don't wince or,
Yeah.
double over in pain.
Yeah, yeah. And so all this, we went on quite a big tangent. The question you had asked me was about how do I help people to like feel and get in? It's like it's very simple. People are often wanting like very complicated. Well, that's simple. Like honestly, breathe. Breathe in your body. I do my Wild Soul movement practice that I created in 2013. It combines meditation with mantras and sensual movement. So it's like slow sensual movement, like a lot of circling of areas of the body while you're breathing and actually deeply connecting and activating the senses. So when I say sensual, it's not sexual, although a lot of women, once you wake up those senses and you can feel and you know how to feel in your body, you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like the amount of pleasure that's available to me now is out of this world because I previously often when you shut down any type of feeling, you're shutting down most of it, all of it, if not.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that is, that makes complete sense. That resonates deeply with me because especially as, a coach who my like exclusive, really my job title in that is just holding space and being a reflector to people and writing. My job is like 1,000% in my head. Like I have a journal on me 24/7. And yeah, for me, the most consistent way that I get out of that is always through, like predominantly through movement and secondarily through touch, whether that's touch with a partner or having a shower and feeling water hit me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I just tell you before this call, I dance around before each coaching call, before every interview. Like I have to get in my body to like that. For me is my kind of stoking the fire of building that bridge between my mind and heart. Of like I'm a body. I'm not a brain with hands that types or talks. It's like I'm a physical being, and like everyone has that energy in them.
I'm not a brain with hands. It's amazing.
But
Amazing.
I think that's absolutely the most drastically reinforced narrative right now is with technology just like owning our lives for the most part. Even people that are like the most intentional about it and are in airplane mode frequently and do actually take weekends off. Gasp. There is that very societally reinforced idea of like you are your productivity, you are your output, and not you're honoring yourself creative output, but you're whatever you make, you're your results, you're your bank account balance, and we just feel like brains, we feel like minds, and yeah, the body absolutely gets just trampled over.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. So movement, breath, in terms of so that sounds more like how do we reconnect with our bodies more on the self-acceptance, self-love of our physical bodies. Even though I largely, for the last 3 years, have been marketing to men, my following is at least 70% female, just because that's what happens in sex and relationships. And I know that there's a huge contingent of, sex drive, libido being dampened because we feel closed off to our bodies or, judgmental of it or shamed in our bodies somehow. What are the kind of intro level ways into how do we have a more loving relationship with our bodies? How do we grow into that acceptance of it?
Yeah, so one of them is this is why I love sensual movement because when you move slowly, like a woman's body is like meant to undulate. Like when I went to the first time I ever took pole dancing classes many years ago in New York City, it was S Factor, Sheila Kelly's S Factor. And one of the reasons why it's called S is because it's like kind of like the shape of a woman's body. And like almost like connecting with like that primal energy, right? Like whatever it is, like even yoga can be very masculine because there's like all these instructions, like tuck this in, pull this back, pull that in, do this, put your foot there, and you're like,
And it's
God
called
damn,
power yoga.
I know. And it's like there is actually what's really funny is over a year after I created Wild Soul Movement. I discovered through a teacher called Shiva Ray, there is a kind of yoga called Sahaja Yoga, which is like the yoga of free form movement. And it just like God, it just like feels so good to be in a body. And my friend Sarah Jenks said this on an Instagram post, then we talked about it on the podcast too, but she said, things don't have to be beautiful in order for us to love them. she said, you know, I have this old crappy sweatshirt that's my favorite freaking thing in the world, and it's like disgusting, right? She said, my babies, when they were born, looked like little aliens. They weren't beautiful yet, right? But I loved them so much. And I've had this experience too, because when I quit personal training and I kind of started doing my own inner work, I also moved to California. I was away from my closest friends and family. And so, in a lot of ways, to get that connection that I was missing, I really started eating seeking comfort in food. And it was like very subtle and very sneaky. And it took me about a year to realize what was happening. So, this is now 2 or 3 years after that. And it's still something that I'm like, still in process with. And I've gained anywhere between like 15 and 30 pounds at the most from where I was when I was a personal trainer, and shifting from the identity of being like the trainer with the bang in his body to like being a little thicker, but like enjoying it. And even the inner dialogue, and whether you're a man or a woman listening to this, like pay attention to this, because this kind of shows you where the cultural programming is. Like I was making myself wrong for enjoying being thicker. And other people, though, were making me wrong for having a little extra weight on my bones. And I was like, but I don't know, like it feels good. And part of it was, again, like there's a line, right, of like the acceptance and then going, all right, like I could chill out, I could move more. I am being a little lazy sometimes, but like actually touching and connecting with your own body, I think is huge. So, and looking at it. So the thing that actually launched me into this new phase of what I do a couple years ago was I wrote a post called Getting Naked and Falling in Love. I was part of Marie Forleo's mastermind in 2011 when she still had one. And the adventure was doing a boudoir photo shoot. I've done many photo shoots for websites and stuff like that. I put a camera in front of me and just let me talk and be myself any day of the week. I actually still don't like taking photos. It feels very contrived to me. I don't love it. But this photo shoot, boudoir shoot, when the photos came back, there was this one image of me, and it's on the site, it's in the blog post, where my hair is longer, so like my curly hair is out. It's from like here down, and I'm just like not wearing a shirt. I'm covering my breasts. I'm wearing a heart ring, and like there are many hearts in the image. The ring, the shape of my breasts under it and below, my lips, and it was just like black and white. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And no sooner did I have that thought that I was hooked into this like, oh, I can't possibly think that about a picture of myself.
Right.
And I really wanted to post it and write about the experience, but I said something to my mom about it. We had a big fight. She's like, and I folded. Like I didn't post that picture or write that blog post till like 31 months later. And at that point, that person in that picture, like that shape, like that tight body, that is not the shape I was in. So there again, like all these layers of the dialogue being like, but that's not who you are anymore. Like so many freaking things to go along with it. But in that blog post, one of the exercises that I offered for people was stand in front of the mirror, get naked in front of the mirror and just look. And find anything on your body that you could appreciate. And that's when you realize you might be dissatisfied. Oh, my belly's a little chubbier than I would like it to be. But like if you're a mom, that belly carried human life, right? Like, oh, I'm getting older, my breasts are saggy. They fed people, right? Like that provided nourishment. Or, whatever's the thing, I have this scar because this thing happened. Or, there are women who are thin and look at themselves and they don't like, I'm too skinny, whatever it is. But there's not a person on the planet who can't look in the mirror. And if you spend enough time there, find at least one thing that you could be like, huh, I really like that. And it might not be because of how it looks. It might be because what it does. Like, I love my legs. Like, I appreciate my legs so much because, I used to live in New York City. I was walking these things. Who knows how many miles these legs have walked and ran and lifted and all these things, right? Or, whatever it is, you could look. It might be like the tip of your nose. It might be your earlobes. But, like, there's something on your body that you could be like, I appreciate that. And you just start there. It doesn't need to be this whole all-inclusive thing. You could be like, okay, I love my belly button. It's adorable. Or whatever it is, but just look. Because one of the reasons why I think it's like anything else. When people have funky stuff with money, they probably don't look at their money, right? If people have a relationship and they're just not talking about the stuff that's going on, they're not looking at it. If you don't love your body, you're probably not looking at it. You're probably hiding. Even something as simple as when you get out of the shower, actually putting on lotion and like touching every inch of your own body and just realizing how good that feels. We do that in Wild Soul Movement sometimes. We'll like literally take 5, 10 minutes to massage our whole body ourselves. And even that, realizing that that love, that connection, that affection that I crave so much from other people is always available. Like I could give it to myself. My YouTube video right now, second most views, is a breast massage video. It's like the best practice in the world. Not to mention, it's like a free boob lift. I have double D's and I haven't worn bras in like 3 years. And people are like, are you kidding me? Like, women touch my boobs all. They're like, can I just, I'm like, go ahead. It's fine. It's like, because when I moved to Southern California, the land of like breast implants and plastic surgery, it was the first time I ever even gained an appreciation because I was like, wow, this thing that I've seen as a burden my whole life is something that people pay thousands of dollars. And this is like homegrown, local, and organic, and I've been hating on them. So, you know I'm a tangent person. I went all over the place
I
there.
love it.
Reel me back in.
No, I love tangents. That's how my brain works too. Just connect, hyperlink.
Yep.
Yeah, the thing that was sticking with me in that last part is that how we absolutely, whether it's internal, external, emotional, physical, sexual, otherwise, that, that's just, to me, that's one of the most human things about being a person is that we have the deepest wounds around our greatest core gifts.
Yeah.
And, the clients that come to me and say, I'm going through this breakup, that it was a very emotionally significant relationship, but, I'm responding to it so deeply. And, in a minute of talking to them, if, for the first time ever, it's so immediately apparent that they just have a huge capacity to love. They have a massive heart. And they were taught once, usually several, 100 times in their childhood, that the way that they were wasn't correct. That,
Right.
They loved too much. They were too sensitive. And I find very similar things with my female clients around body image, that the things that could just as easily, not even be like reframed and like, it's self-trickery, like, oh, I guess I can make myself grateful for this thing. There is that thing that, my female clients that have larger breasts that got them earlier in life, that's, that can be its own like traumatic event to be, the only girl that had boobs when they were 10, 11, and to have them be really significant. There's this, and in both, the male emotionality or the female physical form, there's this kind of, when it's shamed, we want to suppress it. We want to hide it. We want to wear big baggy sweaters for the breasts. We want to be cool and emotional and wear leather jackets and not have feelings if we love too much or we're too sensitive. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I see massive overlap in, that's what came out for me in that last story.
Yeah.
So I love your tangent.
And then the other thing is when you're connecting with your senses, so this is something I talk about all the time, in terms of connecting with intuition. Your body speaks to you through your unique language of the senses. So everyone's signals are different. There are some common ones. Like for most people, goosebumps are kind of like, hey, pay attention. There's some truth happening here.
Tearing up,
or this is
anger.
important. Yeah, right? But when you pay attention to those things and when you allow those things to guide you instead of going, oh, suppress, I shouldn't be feeling, there's like this wealth of true information. And when I say true, when we live primarily in our minds, we're operating on facts that are not true, right? Yeah. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of limitations that come from your mind, but your body always knows the damn truth.
Yep. 1,000%. And, that is at least 80+% of the clients that come to me that are saying, I've been thinking about whether or not to break up with this person for months, like at least 4 to 5 times. The answer is, if you're already suffering this much, then, it's probably pretty likely that, yes, you want out of this relationship. 1 out of 5 times, it's more that, they have an avoidant attachment style and they're just like creating drama because they're actually about to go into the next level, like a really, amazing, emotionally significant phase.
That's me.
Yeah? They're like,
oh, yeah.
How do I make up 20 things to be afraid of? And then it's like,
Yep.
You know what? Maybe this is good for me and I'm fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done that, coming up on technically 2 years in my current relationship. I have lost count of how many times I've done that. It's like, oh, what can I spin some drama around right now so I could create a reason to run away?
Let's rattle the cage today.
I do it all the time. And Michael, I was actually sitting across the couch from Michael. It was just last week, and I was like, Thank you so much for like staying here. Well, every time I do this.
Sorry about tornadoing last month, but I guess it just had to happen.
Yeah, whatever. We both do it. It's just really, it's funny in retrospect. It's not funny when it's happening.
Yeah.
But wait, I'm still. I just want to be super, super clear. The thing about the senses and connected to the intuition, that's a reason to love your body, not because of how she looks, but because of what she could do. And for men, him, her. I also am a really big fan of calling your body he or she, not it,
Mm,
right? Because it feels quite separate. He or
yeah.
she
And
feels like
it's an object, which objectifying your
yes,
body isn't bad in a sexual context sometimes.
right,
But yeah, making it like, oh, there's that thing that I own beneath my brain where everything
yeah.
important's up here and there's my it.
No, that friggin' meat suit, right?
I love that. And I see and hear the exact same thing with our genitals. You know, when we start referring to our penis or vagina as him or her and not just like thing or it, I think the exact same thing happens. It comes to life. It's a relationship. It's not like your relationship to you and your lamp. It's, you know, your relationship to you and your best friend. It's like, you know, I love him. I love her. It's totally
Yeah,
different.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Even with your partner, right? Like, how's he doing? Like talking about his cock, or like, how's she doing? Like, is she wet? Like, like, I love that.
Totally. Oh, amazing. Okay, so to tangent in a different direction, because you do help people taking those leaps in not just love life, but also career, you know, all the, when the stories are coming up, honoring themselves. I'm curious about what you think about the relationship, the transition between forcing versus allowing. Because I feel
Mm.
like those things in themselves are kind of, you know, masculine brain directionality versus body acceptance, surrender. How do you see that coming up in your work, your writing, your coaching?
So again, it comes back to the body, right? Because if you've gotten your answers from your body, you don't have to force yourself to do anything.
It's already so deeply apparent. It's like, I have your answers. It's right here. Like, I'm not
It's
lying
right
to you.
here. It's right here. I'm not lying to you. But what happens often is people go in, they get the answer, and then they go back up and they try to talk themselves out of it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there is actually a useful a useful application of forcing yourself to do something when the body has spoken and the mind is like, right? Because you do need to push through. You need to push through all those layers of the thoughts and of everything and of the other people who maybe don't have the courage that you have. Going, oh my God, what are you doing? Ah, don't do that, right? Like I have a client right now. She's so amazing. She's 50. She just got packaged out of her job that she'd been in for a decade. Killer package, by the way. I was like, that happens? Because I've never really worked in corporate America.
Yep.
It's like 15 months salary and benefits. I'm like, are you kidding me? Welcome to the best 15 months of your life on the way. But she's like freaking out. What am I gonna do? I'm like, I got you, girl. You're gonna. Oh my God, it's so great. But why did I bring her up? The transitional thing. Right. So there are these moments when like she gets the information, she knows what she needs to do, but that mind is still like weaving and
But
spinning.
fear, fear, fear. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm gonna run out of money. And it's like, well, you're getting paid for the next now it's 13 months. Like you actually can't. If you even if you tried. I mean, you probably could. But you know what I mean? Like she's like super responsible. So anything to stay grounded, anything to stay in the body. And there's like very simple, practical, literal energetic things you could do. Again, by just breathing, right? This is one of the reasons I love to use mantras because it just redirects your thoughts into a more empowering place to help you feel better. And there's a
Internally, or do
difference
you verbalize them?
both. I prefer verbalizing for that extra element of the sensuality. If you're just thinking something,
Can't
you're
hear
not
it.
getting you're not feeling it reverberate in your vocal cords and in your body. You're not hearing it out loud. So it's like adds those layers of like depth and richness to the sensual experience of repeating something, right? Um, I'm going on a tangent. What is even the question you just asked me?
Forcing versus allowing. And you
Forcing,
said,
right, 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 right. Because the other thing is when you say things out loud, this is also, I have a practice where I help people feel like yes, no, and truth in their body. And part of that is saying the thing out loud. So, for example, if the thing was, should I stay at my job? Should I leave my job? I would have someone like drop in, breathe, connect to their body, put a hand on their belly, a hand on their heart, and say out loud, I'm going to stay at this job, and then see what the body says. What do you feel and where do you feel it is a question I ask people all the time. And did it feel like a yes or a no? a no is usually going to feel like some kind of pain or constriction or tightness or heaviness. A yes is usually going to feel peaceful, calming, expansive, or like giddy excitement, right?
Totally.
Which then usually begs the question, what's the difference between fear and excitement? Like, you know the difference. You just know. Stop trying to like articulate and analyze everything. Something I wrote myself a little note. I'm like you, right? The things are coming in all the time. So whether it's in the notes on my phone or in my journal,
Hmm.
I'm voice texting myself. Um, one of the things is I get deeper and deeper, more connected to my own intuition. I realize is that so much is felt. Actually putting words to it, there's this gap between what I felt and then I just know it, where I cannot explain it. So I've been giving myself a lot of permission lately to not even need to explain it or articulate it, because sometimes the act of articulating is then filtering it through the mind, which allows for misinterpretation of that deep, deep truth that you just knew and felt. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I'd say even further, the intention behind wanting to verbalize it is in itself a fear-based intention of like, like the fact that it needs words or to be put through any filters is already you doubting the message that you've already gotten, and it doesn't need any more clarification. It's like, it's there, I get it. Like, why am I trying to
Yeah.
put a really succinct, beautiful package of 10 words around it? It's like, you're
Yeah.
already there.
Yeah. So forcing and allowing, there's more nuances here because if you have to like force yourself to go to work every day, or if you have to like, I have clients who are like in relationships they don't want to be in, and
It's
they
like
literally
they
have to like,
acquiesce to sex. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this now.
right, and like that's like a hey red flag, and it doesn't necessarily mean the relationship is wrong. Or you can't, you have to quit your job tomorrow,
Which means
but
there's
it means
something coming up for you.
yeah, there's just something that needs to be handled there. But so sometimes we do need to force ourselves to just like keep going a little bit when body knows and mind is just trying to talk you out of it. But when you get the information from the body, when you get your truth, the allowing piece is allowing yourself to own it and then go, okay, this is fun now. Where's the magic? How can I be super? My coach Shimon says this too, and I use this all the time. How can I now be super, super receptive for this thing or for this experience or even to this person? Like, even in my relationship, when I'm trying to build a fort around myself so I don't have to go deeper into love and intimacy and connection and pleasure, whatever, it's like, okay, how can I soften into this moment and relax and be super, super receptive? And that's not just a feminine thing. Men need to be super receptive too, right? And I think, and sometimes this comes back to the question of masculine and feminine, the topic, because when we are in, most of us are, for whatever reason, like in masculine most of the time, right? Because we have to work, we have to do, we have to create, we have to pay the bills and do all this stuff. And so we need to soften and relax into that feminine sometimes to like transition into whatever is going to be the next thing, right? Like we had friends over for dinner the other night. So I'd actually worked, I was on calls all day. Then I went to the grocery store. And then I cooked a meal for 6 people. And then I cleaned it up. Like I was really playing hostess, even though I'm just not, that's not really me, to be quite honest. So like all the other things are, but to clean up after people, totally, really not me at all. But I did it anyway. And then, later on, I was with my partner, and I'm like, just really noticing how much I didn't want to be doing the work. I was like ready to be receptive because I'd been doing all freaking day, right? So that's on like a micro level, just in the time frame of a day. But even if you look at your weeks or your months or your years, to go, how often am I pushing and forcing, and how often am I giving myself space for that allowing, for the receptivity? And space is a huge component of it. Whether it's your physical space, like we just moved into a much bigger home because we were realizing as we expand and grow, literally in every single way, we literally need more space because it was like it was creating chaos in the relationship and in our home. Plus, we're both coaches, so we're holding space for people. There's like so much stuff coming into our space.
Yeah.
Again, physically, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, all the ways. So we needed a bigger space, big backyard. We could like go outside and like be in the sun and be naked in our yard. Like it's great. But then also getting the space between you and other people, getting the space between you and your work, right? Like we just need freaking space in order to allow. Because when we don't have space, that's when we're forcing and pushing and almost feeling like we have to fight to even be places sometimes, you know?
Yeah, 100%. This is a perfectly timed thread. I just had my 3 year business anniversary a couple months ago, and there absolutely was that kind of crescendo where I felt like I'd been pushing the boulder up the hill. I've been doing sex relationship coaching full time for just over 7 years as of the time of this recording. But yeah, I only started my online presence 3 years ago. So when I was starting from absolutely nothing, like I'd never written a single word ever, and now I've written like 300 and something articles, like 8 books. But there was so much push and hustle, and I'm super proud of the stuff that I put out there. But yeah, about 3 months ago, there was okay. I've been forcing hyper directional, very in my masculine, and I didn't hit a plateau. Like my business was still progressing every month and doing really well, and I'm still super grateful for it. But there was this like, okay, I've like really been deprioritizing my feminine. I've really been deprioritizing the allowing, the receptivity, the space. And so for most of this calendar year, I went and lived in a ski resort town for a few weeks. I cut back my coaching hours from 25 hours a week to like 3 hours a week. Like I really made space for those things to come. And this video series is actually one of those things, like this is one of the gifts that came from it was me remembering that 6 or 8 months ago, people were asking for videos. I was like, oh yeah, but I didn't have the bandwidth for it back then.
Right.
And when I allowed myself to have those weeks off, I was like, I love video stuff. Like I was like my actual university education, I was a film production major, so like it's
Oh,
really
no way.
easy for me.
Yeah.
Plus, I love connecting. I love extracting information. I love pulling value from other people to serve my tribe. And yeah, I got hit with a wave of it like within the last 10 days, where I was like, this has to be a thing. And it was such a clear, crazy, powerful body message. It was like there was really quiet radio static for months, and then just like out of nowhere, the amplifier turned up to 11, and like a huge, like amazing dubstep song came on. And I was like, whoa, that's a message. And I put it together within a matter of days, and like got the video thing made and lined up calls, and yeah, it's so funny how I think that voice, it wants to be heard, but we just do so much to like to silence it or push it away, to stay
Right.
in that mode of but I'm getting these things from being in the forcing directional masculine. And in a loosely related way, that is a very common thing with people that have bipolar disorder, because when they're in their manic or hypermanic phases, like in the up phases, one of the main reasons they don't want to medicate is that they can rightfully say, but I'm so productive in those days. Like I love those highs because I clean my entire house and I do these things, and I'm super productive, and I write a book in a night, and things like, yeah, you get stuff done, but is it really rooted in the most self-loving, self-accepting way, or is it just kind of the tornado is knocking over all the buildings and causing mayhem?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I love to use the word bandwidth because it's a great way to think of it. Even like last year too, and this was really funny. I was at a business conference. A friend of Michael's who I hadn't met had taken me aside. We were having a conversation. We were going over like what's the current state of my business. How am I making money and whatever. And then I guess he was talking to Michael separately. He's like, your girl has basically muscled her way to a multiple six-figure business. And in December, actually it was November when my book was launching, when I was running my retreat in Costa Rica, all these things were coming to a head. I was exhausted. I'm like, it had been a lot of that push, 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 push. I was like, I literally can't do another year of my life like this. So I also, and even though this is what I teach, like, I raged against that saying, you teach what you most need to learn for the longest time. And I'm like, no,
So
it's
true.
true.
Yep.
So freaking true. Unavoidably true.
Yep.
And this year I was like, okay, that's the space. Space, my words for this year were space, grace, and devotion. And I'm like, all right, so I'm literally going to devote myself to space and grace this year. And literally in I think it was just the month of February, 3 new one-on-one clients, just like effortlessly, they found me. They randomly reached out to me, and I was like, oh, this is what it's like when I'm not like hustling all the time, and stuff can just, it feels like it landed in your lap, and it didn't. But because you weren't clinging and forcing and pushing and so distracted, there was room for like life to do its thing, which often will be far more magical than what we try to orchestrate ourselves.
Totally. Yeah, and whether it's law of attraction, the secret type stuff or not, I think there's huge truth in when you're in hustle mode. Just to keep it in our easy, relatable realm, when you're in hustle mode, and like that energy is permeating every interview you do, every article you put out, every piece of content you put out. The people that are also hustling and grinding, they'll see themselves in that and go, yeah. And so you'll get people that are like 40% aligned, people applying to coach with you, versus when you allow that ease and softness and space, that's going to permeate the way that you are communicating with the world, and then those people will be attracted to you. So it's very easily trackable, and I've seen the exact same thing in my coaching practice and in the messages that have been coming from my body. So I totally get it.
And it's super interesting because I've noticed people being a little less responsive to some of the things that I've put out and shared this year because my language is changing, because I'm in the space of receiving and other people are still in that go, go, go space. And I'm like, oh, it's like I read this amazing book. I'm super into anything having to do with Jesus and Mary Magdalene. That's a thread we don't have to pull. It doesn't feel relevant for this interview. Okay. But I read like voraciously anything historical fiction I get my hands on, because a lot of it is hard to prove. But this one book I read recently called The Book of Love, there was just this line that they kept using in the book: for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. And when you're resonating in a certain way and communicating in a certain way, vibing in a certain plane, some people are not going to have the eyes to see or the ears to hear.
Totally.
And it's okay.
And different parts of your message will resonate with different people at different times.
Yeah,
like, that can also happen with, with being a content provider. There's been times where people reach out to me like, hey, I just read this post of yours. I love it. I'd like to do coaching with you. And it's a post that's like 2.5 years old. And I'm like, I'm not there at all anymore. Like, I'm so glad it brought any value to your life, but like, I'm not that person. And if I'm able to, then like this person's more a person that's still like that. Not still as if it's like a previous level, just here's someone who's more aligned with you.
Yeah.
That's a funny paradigm of like putting our, seemingly permanent time-stamped items out to the world that you're always shifting and evolving.
Totally. Like I'll go. Do you ever read something you wrote like 2 years ago and cringe a little bit?
Oh, totally.
I've done that.
I wish I could kill off most of what I wrote more than a year ago.
Yeah, but that's part of the process, right? And just like you said, someone will be at that point in their journey and that thing will resonate and you're like, great, I'm glad it's still helpful.
I can't remember if it was Jack Kerouac or someone else. Some badass writer was talking about how if you aren't reading everything that you've written like 6 months ago and before, and if you're reading that stuff and not cringing, then you might not be growing fast enough.
Cool. Okay. High five then, because
yeah, and like, there's like a piece of me that I feel like this, this sliver, this wedge is necessary to say that we shouldn't be forcing and like, oh, I have to like be, growing and thriving exponentially, and like this has to be like a constant aim. But I love how much that can let people off the hook. That, I've heard so many clients be like, they've gotten out of long-term relationships or multi-decade marriages, and then they'll, I hear the kind of self-shaming creeping in, like, oh, was I like drunk the entire relationship? What was I doing? And I'll kind of take them off the hook and be like, you did exactly what you needed to do at that moment. You were honoring that version of your body, that moment. And yes, it can feel or seem massively incongruent now, but you honored that version of you, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's like you were telling me before we got on that you watched my little clip posted the other day. Yeah, back when I used to do fitness stuff, I had a program called Tighter in 10 Days. Even the name of it makes me cringe now.
Right.
But I actually, as I've been getting back into working out, I'm like, I felt really pulled to do my own program. So here I am in my living room the other day, letting 28-year-old me train 32-year-old me.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, I'm literally there falling in love with myself. I'm like, I love this chick. Why was I so hard on her? She's adorable.
So cute.
Oh my God. And like so many things of how I teach and how I lead now. It was still there. I was still having people listen to their body and like take breaks when they need it.
You were still
some of the
through.
Encouraging things I was saying, I'm like, she's so great. I'm like, I get why people were really upset when I took this program off the market. But I was like, man, I was so hard on her for what she didn't know. And I'm like, it feels very healing and full circle now to go back and be like, she was so great. I love her. I love her now, retrospectively.
That's so funny that you mentioned that even like the title of the thing makes you cringe now. Like there are articles that I wrote 3 years ago that when I read the headlines, I'm like, oh, is that what I was putting out there? And you know, for you, like relatively, like, if 110 days was the thing that many years ago, you know, it sounds like you're closer to like how to be softer in 70 days, like how to accept yourself is like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
the new
yeah.
paradigm.
Totally.
Oh my goodness! All right, we've gone in like 1,000 different directions, and I love it. Uh, let's wrap this up. How can how can people get a hold of you? I know that from what I know, you've got, you know, almost 100 episodes out on your podcast. There's a lot of badass content. You do some live programs, it's some one-on-one coaching. Where can people find you? What's your home
The
base?
main site is untameyourself.com. And if you just search the name Dialto, Dialto, on any social media, luckily it's pretty much just me. My little brother's a comedian. You might find his stuff once in a while, but it's mainly just me. So if you search my name in iTunes, the podcast will come up, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the places. I dig Facebook a lot for the social interaction. I have a free Facebook group. So, for people who want to have these conversations, but they don't want to be doing it publicly, they're worried about like their friends and family seeing it. If you go to untameyourself.com/Facebook, that group is actually for men and women. It's mostly women, but that's like my little safe space on the interwebs, public and not public, private and free for people.
Nice. And I'll definitely include a link to the book in the show notes. I highly recommend it for men and women.
Thank you.
And on that note, I would actually say that, you know, this probably could have been a thing that I had said off the top of the call, but this work is so crazy vital for not just women, but also men. I feel like, you know, this is the deeply healing revolution that the world's going through right now is everyone's connecting their masculine and feminine, connecting their heads to their hearts. And I feel like basically all of the major plights of the developed and developing world can be tied back to people that are disconnected from themselves in some way. So if you resonate with Elizabeth's message, I definitely recommend checking out her stuff, maybe reaching out and going from there. Elizabeth, thanks so much for being on the show. So good to
Thank
have you.
you. Bye.